Hello, everyone, and welcome to another video here on the Sports Daily Media Network YouTube channel. This is a college football playoff preview for the game between Penn State and SMU on Saturday, December 21st at noon in Happy Valley. I'm your host, Sean Vowells, and I'm joined by Joe Meade. And Joe, before we get into the matchups and stuff, let's go through a little bit how these teams got there. Both teams were runners-up in their conference championship game. First, we'll start with Penn State. Kind of more of the same over the last couple of years for them. They lose to their big opponents, beat everybody else. They're 11-2 with losses to Ohio State and Oregon. Other impressive wins over, basically everyone from USC, UCLA, Illinois, West Virginia, Washington, Minnesota, and losses to the teams that they're better than. So, kind of been more of the same for Penn State, but with 12 teams, with the playoffs expanded, that sort of play style gets you enough to be in the postseason. And in terms of SMU, Joe, they are 11-2. The big question mark coming into the selection show is whether they'd be there or Alabama in the last at-large spot. They get the nod, an early loss to BYU, and then a loss to Clemson in the ACC championship. But other big wins against Duke, Pitt, Stanford, Louisville, Florida State, TCU, and Cal get SMU to this spot. So, Joe, we're going to see a lot of favorites, pretty significant, or a lot of home teams, pretty significant favorites here. Tell me a little bit of how Penn State can make that true and win this ball game.
I shot cut out for a sec, but I think you were just asking me my take on the game.
Yeah. How is Penn State gonna do this?
I think there's a lot of big factors that I wouldn't have considered a week ago. I think the immediate elephant in the room is Bo Pribula entering the portal, which I find really strange and not staying with the team, unlike a Devin Brown. The biggest difference between those two guys is Bo Pribula has been a decently significant portion of this offense. I'm not going to pretend like this is a complete game changer. The line should shift at all. All I'm saying is that Penn State offensive line better really emphasize pass protect even more so than they would in an elimination game.
Lose you again there, Joe?
Yeah, you lost
you're
me
back.
for a bit.
You're back.
Yeah.
Yep. Just you cut out with the offensive line.
Yeah, I think outside of the offensive line, I think Drew Allar's got to make the plays he made against Oregon. I think if that happens, Penn State cruise pretty comfortably. I'm not even worried about the Penn State defense, which is strange to say because it's not really a matter of disrespecting SMU's offense. I think it's more of a matter of understanding that they could get pressure on Kevin Jennings. They could eliminate Brashard Smith. I think the biggest deal for Penn State in this game is to just play your typical, stay the course. Simple as that. I think the big criticism of James Franklin this season by his biggest detractors, most, by the way, in the Penn State fan base, I'm not saying it's any external attacks that are egregious, are that they haven't made the big play, but they also haven't made the big mistake either. And I think this is a game where, so long as they don't make the big mistake, they should win by what the spread is, like about a touchdown and a field goal. I think as they progress through this playoff, assuming they take care of business here, they're going to have to make the big play. That goes without saying. That's not even Genius 101. I think that's been the story of the Franklin era all along. Haven't made the big play. But unlike most years, they haven't made the big mistake this year. And I think that's something they've done very well. I think Drew Allar's protected the ball masterfully. I think Nick Singleton and Katron Allen in the month of November have played some of their best football as Nittany Lions. And I think with Tyler Warren, he clearly earned the award as the best tight end in the country for a reason. I think SMU's not going to be able to cover him. I've seen better defenses leave him open, and I'm starting to believe that he's just unguardable. I think Penn State has to exploit all those advantages on the offensive side of the ball because I do think they're going to have to score at least 28 to win this game. But I do think if they score in the 30s, they're going to win this pretty comfortably.
I think, Joe, this is one where it's going to be that the longer that SMU's in the game, the more that they believe they can win. I think this might be the most lopsided first-round game between the four. And I think if Penn State shows up, they score first, they strike first, they punch first, however you want to put it, I think this could be a pretty easy victory, but SMU's offense is stellar at times. If they score, if they score 10-14 in the points in the first quarter, then I think there is a little bit of a concern of getting in a total track meet, which I know Penn State did just last week and they lost. I think that is the way that they lose this one too. I'm not sure SMU can really stop them for the majority of the game, barring some really silly mistakes like turnovers or missed field goals or something like that. So while the other game that we previewed, Joe, between Notre Dame and Indiana, check that video out if you haven't already. I do think this might be one where Penn State might try and hit like a big hitter on the first drive. See if they can really get their fans into it and ahead, because this is sort of, we've never seen this before, Joe. We've never seen a playoff game in front of your home fans. If the other team scores first, is that crowd going to get nervous, and is that going to affect the players? We do talk about it sometimes in basketball, but I do think it could play more of a role here. So I think we'll see Penn State maybe try and hit an explosive play on that first drive, maybe even a trick play involving Tyler Warren. But I do think if Penn State takes care of the ball for the entire game, that they will win. But SMU's certainly good enough offensively to be able to steal a shootout.
Yeah, I think one last key for the Penn State defense is get SMU to third in passing.
Yeah.
I think where Rhett Lashley as a play caller and an overall offensive coach is dangerous is when he feels like he has options. Because 3rd and 3, no matter who you're playing, whether it's Penn State, whether it's Clemson, whether it's a lowly team in the ACC, it gives you plenty of options. And that's something we've seen SMU thrive in. And I think they're a team that's very comfortable passing on 1st and 2nd down. So I think Penn State's going to have to be alert for. But one thing I'll tell you is if you're 3rd in passing, no team in the country is comfortable with that pass rush, and particularly Abdul Carter breathing down your neck. I think that's a complete nightmare that SMU needs to stay out of, especially with the crowd. Let's face it, Sean. I know we've criticized Penn State a lot this year. They've done a lot of things right because they're 11-2. That's not easy to do, right? It's not easy to almost beat Oregon and Ohio State, but that's been more of the same for Penn State. I don't think they've won a big home game since the 2019 whiteout against Michigan. This is a fan base that's starved for a huge win at home. And ultimately, if you don't want to consider that a big win, they haven't beaten a top 5 team at home since 2016, and that was that Ohio State game that really jump-started the James Franklin era of success at Penn State. So, not a top 5 game, but certainly a top 5 game in terms of importance. So, I think the fans are going to treat it as that, and I do think Penn State's going to do their typical thing at the end of half, trying to completely wipe out SMU. I do think if they succeed there, this game could get really out of hand. Ultimately, I think SMU hangs around. I think it's one of the things we talk about in basketball, where they're a play away from being a play away, because I just think Penn State's going to protect the ball and really understand that to stay the course. And Drew Aller's showed a lot of maturity this year. I think he'll do just that. I think Penn State wins this game 31-19. Barely covering that 11.5, and I do think James Franklin probably gets the second biggest win as a head coach at Penn State, and they finally proved they can have postseason success.
And Joe, I've got 33-20 Nittany Lions. I think there will be a drive, whether it's the end of the 3rd, beginning of the 4th, where a touchdown from Penn State kind of is the kill shot. And I will say this: SMU will definitely be their best win this year. They haven't beaten a team as good as SMU yet, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And so it's time for Drew Aller to prove that last week wasn't such a fluke. I mean, he really hung with Oregon for most of that game, putting up 35 points on the number 1 team in the country. Let's see if they can do that again. I think this is sort of an 80-20 game. Penn State probably wins 4 out of 5. I give them a little bit better of a chance than I did Notre Dame in our previous video. But Joe, and Penn State fans have been complaining again about yet another noon kickoff. You know what you do about that? You win. You win the big game, because they've unfortunately been unable to do that really for a bunch of years. So I think Penn
8
State.
years, I'd say.
I think Penn State wins by 2 scores. It's one that at the end of the 3rd quarter might not be over yet. But Penn State 33, SMU 20. And the winner of this game, Joe, will go on to play Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. So certainly, I would think that both of these teams, if they win this, might like their chances in that next game too. But until then, We will be back a couple days after the game to recap it and see what happens. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into this video, and we'll see you next time.